Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Pat O.
Pat. Oh, happy after Halloween.
Happy post Halloween.
How was your post? Is a much better word than after. How was your Halloween weekend?
It was all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did trunk or treating on Saturday. That was really the bulk of our Halloweening this year. Uh, my kids are kind of too old to do it. They're
Okay.
like in that weird in between spot where like they're not kids anymore, but they're not like teenagers and young adults that go out and party for Halloween. So the majority of our festivities happened on Saturday for the school's trunk or treat. And then Sunday was pretty much just me folding laundry and passing out candy to the kids. Like in the neighborhood, you know what I mean?
Okay.
So that was really the majority of my Halloween was probably spent passing out candy.
What costume did you land on?
So I went with the squid monster thing,
Cool.
which was kind of interesting because by the time we got to the trunk or treat, I noticed that my son's penguin costume, he was a 7 foot tall penguin, which Lovecraft fans will remember are like some of the villains in At the Mountains of Madness. And I was like, holy shit, we actually look like not that anyone there made that connection, trust me. But we were like a pair of HP Lovecraft cosplayers, I guess you'd say. Um, but yeah, that was it. My daughter was some anime character that all the other kids were like enamored by. I have no idea who. Demon Slayer, I guess. And I'm pretty up on anime for the most part, but I never heard of this shit. But yeah, so that's what she did. And that was it. But I did get a chance to watch a movie that I want to plug real quick.
Okay.
And I started reading a book that I think we're going to talk about a lot on this show.
Sure.
So the movie that I watched was Spine of Night. It's an animated like throwback to heavy metal, the animated cartoon. It's very violent. It's very bloody. There's lots of nudity. There's lots of cartoon boobies in it. And it's like an anthology series with Lucy Lawless, Patton Oswalt, Joe Maglione, and who's the other guy? I forget his name. He's having a moment right now. He was the bad guy in Hudson Hawk, and he was nominated for an Oscar last year. Richard Grant. I don't know. But anyway, totally worth checking out. I was not high when I watched it because I was passing out candy to the kids, but I wish I was. It was absolutely spectacular. And then the book that I'm reading right now is by Adam Gorightly. It's called Saucer, Spooks, and Kooks, UFO Disclosure in the Age of Aquarius. And I'm like a tenth of the way through it, but it has a lot to do with cattle mutilations. And it's got like some of the first actual theories that I've read about cattle mutilations, like not just like, oh, it's aliens and it's something with DNA or some shit. Like it really gets into the cattle mutilations and when they started and where they started and who made the first reports and who made the first connections and shit like this. And it's very, very interesting. And it makes me want to do the cattle mutilation episode even more.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. I definitely am all for that. Well, we've been talking about doing cattle mutilations for a long time, and it just seems to continue to be a theme in our lives. And so, I mean, I think that's a good start.
Yeah. Can't ignore it. So what
So,
about you? How was your you had like you had basically this year's Harley Quinn costume with your Mothman. I mean, you did it the best, hands down. But it was a very popular costume this year, I'd have to
yeah,
say.
what do you mean? You've seen a lot of Mothman out there?
I saw let me put it like this. Excluding you, it's a non-zero number of costumes.
Wow. Okay.
So, but I
I
mean,
love.
you rocked it harder than anyone else. They should all take notes from you. But
Yeah, I mean, I see Mothman costumes every year, but like, not everybody dresses as the Mothman. But I did see a more than usual, I believe. But yeah, no, I wasn't Mothman though. I was Mothman,
correct,
and
correct.
so it was different. Um, but no, I mean, I did my Halloween party thing. I had my party, and that was fun. And then we did the trick or treat thing on Sunday, and
Yeah,
but pretty uneventful to be honest with you. That's just kind of been the way the cookie's been crumbling lately, as things have just been very slow and weird. But that's okay. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have any stories to tell about it.
is all that stuff over now? Because I was reading I was reading last night actually that we just hit the tail end of a sunspot cycle, and that kind of coincided with all the astrology shit that's been going on the past couple weeks that people have been talking about. I know we've even brought it up on the show before, but
Yeah.
are we finally out of that?
Well, for the majority, yes. There's still, I mean, so some planets when they go into retrograde, they're in retrograde for years.
Oh, geez.
So, well, and there's, I mean, there's always something for the most part. I mean, there's usually always something in retrograde. It just depends on, there's multiple factors at play to whether or not it will affect you and how it will affect you when it's in retrograde. So, refer to your birth charts if you have not. But for the collective people, yes, we are out of that. I think we're still on the tail end of the shadow days, which takes a couple. So it's like, even though, like, for Mercury, so even though like a planet goes direct doesn't mean that it's reflected on Earth yet. It takes a while for the effects of it to get here because of, light years and how it travels through space. So it still takes a couple of days for things to kind of go back to normal. But like I was saying, I think for the majority, yeah, we're pretty much out of that time period.
It feels, and now I celebrate Halloween. We decorated this year. I'm always very festive and shit, I guess. Like I like it as far as holidays go. Um but there's a very palpable sense of relief that I have that this is over. You know what I mean? And it's,
Good.
yeah, and I don't know why. It's not like it was a negative thing, and it wasn't like, it all culminated in some party or something like that. Like it's just like it's over now. I'm glad that I came home from work today, and before I even took my shoes off, I took down all the Halloween decorations and put them in the garage. Like that's it. You know what I mean? Like it feels good to kind of just like turn the page on this one. Not that this was necessarily negative, but just I don't know. There's something about it.
Yeah,
I'm ready to be
it
moving in the
definitely, it
next one.
wasn't a bad Halloween. It was a very strange and indifferent one, and I feel like a lot of people felt that this year, and
Yeah.
probably, could very well be because the planets were just so fucking out of whack. It was hard to really just enjoy it, and so that's just where we were, and now it's no nut November. So if you
What?
celebrate that,
I fucked that one
um,
already, Ashers.
if you like to
You
be
just-
sad, no nut November's for you.
that went out the fucking window when you were 15 minutes late for this recording session. I'll tell you that right now. So,
Wow.
I mean, here, I'll pull
I
up the young
mean,
lady's name whose fault it was. Skylar Vox. You take it up with her. I'm sorry about that.
oh, well, then, I didn't know we
You-
were naming names, but,
well, apparently I get a hell of a lot of fan feedback when I do, so I'm going to start name dropping my.
your
I'm gonna.
flavor of the week.
I mean, if it gets people calling that phone number, what's the hotline again?
773-59 weird.
Well, then
I
that's
swear
what
to
it
God,
takes.
I will have, yes, I will play your guys's messages. I promise you I will. Things have just been very strange. I've been doing a lot of regular people, very boring, very monotonous
It's freaking
shit.
her the fuck out.
It is. It's fucking wild. It's just got my ass in a tailspin right now. So but it's slowing down. Things are starting to get kind of normal. I still don't have a vehicle, so that's great. I'm going on week 3 now without a vehicle. So it's been fucking awesome.
Damn.
So, and it's just a matter of, actually diagnosing the issue and then getting the fucking part. It's ridiculous. So anyway, like I said, I've just been doing a lot of regular people stuff, and I apologize, but I'm getting ready. CryptidCon is right around the corner, and so I am conserving my energy because that's gonna be a hell of a weekend. So super exciting stuff. Um, Pat doesn't know if he's going to go. So if you think Pat should go to CryptidCon, you should call us at 773-59 weird and tell Pat that he should go to CryptidCon. But
I am like 90% sure I'm gonna go still. I did not get my ticket this weekend, unfortunately. Our sub pump went out last week in the heavy rains that the Midwest were inundated with.
yeah.
And so that had to take precedence, but we'll see.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Right now, it's just the time period of just like chill and kind of get your regular shit together, and like it's just not a very fun time. I don't care. You know what? It's the week after Halloween, and by this weekend, my Christmas tree will be up and it will be beautiful. And you can suck my dick if that's a problem. Um, I've earned it this year.
Yeah, you earned a good dick sucking, haven't you? Did I tell you my plan for Christmas decorations? I'm actually in the same headspace where I'm very much looking forward to Christmas decorations. We are doing this is me and my son, an idea we came up with together. This isn't just me trying to project on my kid like he's cool. We seriously, this was a conversation we had in the car. We're gonna get a nativity scene, like one of your standard Walmart FIM nativity scenes, with an African American Jesus if we can get one, or a Jesus of color if they have it. Okay, because the theme of this nativity scene is going to be authenticity. All right,
Okay.
I want a Middle Eastern Jesus on my front lawn, and then for the angels, my son and I are going to build biblically accurate angels, okay? Not just the people or the little cherubs with the wings on it. I mean the fucking monstrosities that are like peeking through from another dimension with like a million eyes and four groups of feathers and the fucking lamb's head and all that shit. And we already designed one of them. We're going to take pool noodles and loop them around in a spiral and then put ping pong balls for eyeballs all over it. And all we need to do is figure out the humanoid one with the animal heads and the four sets of wings and shit. But we were gonna do like an actual nativity scene. Like if this shit really happened, this is what you'd be seeing.
Well, you're
You'd be,
gonna absolutely have to take pictures of that. That's awesome.
of course, of course.
That
Well, we
that
still
is
have to do it.
amazing.
We're gonna be building them in November, and then hopefully the day after Thanksgiving, this thing goes up.
You got it ready. Yeah. Wow. I
Yeah,
think that's great. No, I'm sure you can find, actual Jesus maybe online somewhere.
POC Jesuses. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, no,
I'm
no.
sure someone
I've
knows
seen
some.
them around in the neighborhood before. So
If anything, get you just a baby doll. You know what I mean, and put it as Jesus. So I don't know, but no, that's a really good idea. No, I'm so down. I am feeling the Christmas spirit. That's that's what I'm just moving right along here on my holidays. But no, yeah, like I said, my weekend's pretty. I mean, for the most part, it's pretty uneventful. I mean, we did the trick or treating thing, and the kid enjoyed herself, and I enjoyed myself, and it was good. But yeah, that was my weekend. Like I said, pretty boring stuff. Um, so that's really all I got. I got some news. You want to hear the news?
what you got? Oh, did you see the story that I sent you?
I did.
Okay, will you talk about that
No, I was going
at
to talk
some
about
point?
that.
Okay,
I
all
was
right.
going to talk about that first.
Oh, all right. Never
Well,
mind.
I wasn't going to talk about that first, but let's go ahead and talk about it. Um, because I also kind of want to mention it too. Because we'll get there. Okay, so Pat, why don't you share? It's your news. You bring the news. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay,
So
all right.
basically, there was an actual case this year of a someone that found hypodermic needles in candy bars, and it happened in Ohio, no less,
It sure did.
just north of between Lima and Toledo, which is actually the part of Ohio that I'm the most familiar with because that's what's right across from Fort Wayne. So I've been to
Yeah,
Toledo a bunch of times. Tony Paco's.
I am
Check that.
not very familiar with that. What is that? A pizza place or something?
No, it was mentioned in MASH. It's like Coney dogs. You know how you guys call chili dogs Coney dogs because you're fucking creative? Yeah, so it's just like a chili dog place.
I didn't know other places didn't call it
Coney
Coney
dogs?
dog.
No, that's an Ohio thing. That's and the way you guys put chili, like it's just it's its whole fucking thing. Chicago does hot dogs very specifically, and these Toledo abominations are like anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Everybody's you gotta. I mean, different places got different hot dogs. It's not just a battle between Ohio and Chicago. Like what about the New York? I mean, come on now. Anyway, okay. So Coney dogs, that's the thing. Anyway, you were saying that they found hypodermic needles and this candy and what have you.
Yeah,
Um, which I did read about, and actually not just there. I mean, I read it in my local news. Now, wherever this place is, it's very far away from me. The city, I don't recognize. I never heard of this fucking place before.
right.
It's so I'm assuming it's one of those weird middle of nowhere cities in Ohio. But it was on my local news too, and so I was trying to do like some digging. I don't know about this, Pat. I think this is a weird one because like it's not like the reports that I read about it are just like, oh, these needles were found in this Kit Kat bar and then another Kit Kat bar. But it's really not like an interview with the parent that found it or anybody that's actually connected to it. So how do we know that it's not just somebody just did this just to fucking make it on the news or You know what
You
I
know
mean?
what?
Like,
That's
how do we know that this was actually somebody that passed it out?
so that's you know
And
what you
they said they only found 2 pieces of candy like that.
right, and it was from the same person. They were sewing needles. So the name of the town, we're gonna do real live fact checking here. Fostoria, Ohio. Okay. So let's look at this because I'm very curious at what the population is. I'm sure it's pretty fucking small. The population is 13,000 people. So you're talking about a relative. I mean, we got suburbs around here that are
It's
bigger
small,
than
but
that.
that's not that small. I mean, it's
Yeah. But my point is that you know, you're not hearing about this happening in New York. You're not hearing about this happening in Cleveland. You're not hearing about this happening in Detroit. You're hearing about a case of this in Fostoria, Ohio.
yeah, which I've never heard of this. I've lived in Ohio my whole life, never heard of this town.
Right. So it's kind of like it is kind of seems like either this is a real random nut job or I mean someone's crazy here. Either they actually did it and they're crazy or they faked it and they're crazy. And
Right.
in any case it's the product of one mentally unstable person.
I mean, I just think it's weird. Like, why didn't somebody put it in more, why is there not more candy that's, come out and they're like, "Oh, we found more." You know what I mean? Like if it was actually somebody like targeting children, I guess, sticking needles and fucking Halloween candy. But, so the last episode, when we talked about this pretty extensively, somebody had commented on because I put the episodes up on YouTube. Some of you are listening to this on YouTube now. Somebody had commented on the last video and mentioned that somebody in Huntington, West Virginia, had been sprinkling crack on candy and then feeding it to the kids there, and then like a bunch of kids died or overdosed or whatever. But like,
Holy shit.
so they mentioned that, but when I went to go Google it, I didn't find anything. And they said that, oh, yeah, well, it happened. Maybe they're just trying to cover it up. And I know you're listening to this now, but why?
Why would
Why
they
would
cover it up? Well, because it would I could understand why you would cover it up.
Why?
Because you wouldn't want to create a panic.
What do you mean, though? Every single year, every news station in every town across America talks about exactly this. So it's not
That's a
really
good
causing a panic if that's something that people are used to.
that's a very good point.
Or expect. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking forward to if they find any information on this. I would love to read about it. I'd be very interested. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm just saying that I would like to see the evidence because we talked about it, and I kind of mentioned that just the science points to that this stuff does happen, but it doesn't really happen. Like I mean, it doesn't happen a lot.
So,
It's very rare.
okay, but let's continue with this train of thought. So when do you think that these are just all like myths or that nobody because like let's look at this case with from Fostoria, Ohio,
Sure,
okay?
sure,
And let's just use this as like a microcosm. So either crazy person fakes this and this is just something that they came up with to get attention. Even though it's interesting their name isn't mentioned in the story here, although I guess you wouldn't really necessarily need the person's name.
no,
Okay. Uh, two, that this actually happened and there's a different crazy person that decided to fuck with candy. All right.
sure,
Option three is that none of this happened. And this is just something that the press drums up every once in a while. Like it's by some higher power that says circulate stories about candy tampering, or this is
yeah.
something that, because I mean, this is either
It
this is
sells
a,
papers. I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
Well, it does. I mean, if you see an article, you look at your local news and you see the same shit all the time, right? I mean, whatever it is, Pat, you're in Chicago. I'm sure you are familiar with your local news and roughly
Right.
what's in it all the time. But, out of all that stuff, you see, oh, hypodermic needles found in candy bars. What article are you most likely to click on? It's going to be that one and actually read through it all. So they get paid for the clicks. So, I mean, it's a very, not a noteworthy story, but I mean, it's like I said, it sells papers. And, so I could definitely see it being a media marketing move just to get people to click on their shit and read it. I could also see it being people that just, decided to stick some needles in some candy bars and say, oh my God, we found these, but they didn't really. But it could also be a psycho that just decided, I'm going to go buy a whole bag of candy and I'm going to stand outside and I'm going to hand it out. And in two of those candy bars, I'm just going to play a little game and put fucking needles in them. Does that happen? I guess so. I guess it. I mean, it's not that it's impossible, just that it's highly unlikely. It doesn't really happen that often.
Yeah,
And that's that's kind of what the conclusion that we came to on the last episode is that, yeah, this does happen. It's not that it never ever happens, just that it doesn't usually happen.
yeah,
It doesn't happen a lot. So I don't know. But I feel like, these stories kind of come out every year. I mean, as far as the Huntington story goes, if any of you can find any information, or maybe you're from the area, maybe you remember it, maybe you want to talk about it, you can send it to me on social media, or, of course, tell your story on 773-59-WEIRD. Right to the voicemail. So people are going to get so sick of that.
yeah. If you guys happen across, while you're eating your Halloween candy, if you happen across anything before you dial 911, dial
Dial
773.
that number and let us know if there's crack on your almond joy or whatever. you know Just kidding. Nobody eats almond joy. Nobody put crack on those. That's the only way you could get anybody to eat them. Oh, great. Now people are going to be mad because they like almond joy.
What's the difference between parsley and pussy?
I don't know.
No one eats parsley.
Oh, wow. There you go. So now, okay, well, now it's almond joy and pussy. Is that what it's?
I don't know.
Almond joy is the new parsley.
My grandma told me that joke.
Oh, bless your soul, Grandma.
Right.
But anyway, well, okay, so there's that. But no, okay, so that was one story. Good job, Pat, for finding that one. I got another one here. I just kind of wanted to talk about. It's kind of more of an opinion piece. Nah, not really. There was a poll done, and it was only a poll of about 2,000 people here in America, in New York. And what they found out of the 2,000 people polled was that 57% of those people believe in the paranormal. So they believe in, ghosts or, hauntings and things like that. 39% believe in aliens or life on other planets. And then 27% believe in cryptids like Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster, things like that. Why do you think that it is so wildly different? Why do you think that 57% believe in the paranormal as opposed to 27% believing in cryptids?
I think that's what you're seeing is people that think about this versus people that don't. Like, I think if you ask your average person on the street, do you believe in ghosts? Most people won't really think about it. They'll just be like, yeah, sure, okay. That is not a very hard question. It doesn't take a lot of soul searching. It's not going to change your worldview, right? I bet if you discounted the ghost and cryptid questions and you just asked those like two individuals what their worldview were, I'm sure they would have completely different outlooks on politics and
Sure.
culture and stuff like that. I think you have somebody that the top percentage that you gave, those are probably people that are more just kind of like normal or basic.
Sure.
Like, yeah, I've seen ghost hunters, I think, on Discovery Channel, or like, yeah, I believe in ghosts, whatever. And then you have somebody like, do you believe in, Ogopogo or whatever that fucking thing is? And like, that's like somebody that's spent a lot more time thinking about this shit.
Right.
And I think there's a lot fewer people walking around on this planet that actually spend time reading and doing the research that takes to believe in these things. Any geek off the street knows the concept of ghosts. It doesn't require a lot of like exposure to non-mainstream materials. When you start moving into aliens and stuff, you're getting more and more specialized areas of knowledge until you get to the cryptids, and the cryptids are like the apex nerd for this shit.
Well,
From what I've learned in the past year and a half of doing this fucking show is
No,
The
that's a
cryptid
good point.
people are a completely different fucking breed. You know.
Sure. Well, thank you. No, I think you're right. I think that a lot of people, because here's also something that I've considered with a view like this, because I do find that a lot of people, I've had people straight up tell me that they believe in ghosts but don't believe in cryptids, and it's like, how the fuck can you possibly believe in one and not the other? Like, ghosts aren't a
They're
ridiculous
not.
concept to you, but Bigfoot, oh hell no, that's just not. It
Trust me,
sounds
it took
silly.
them a fraction of a second to make that distinction in their head. They didn't give it any serious thought or anything. You know what I mean?
Because yeah,
Like,
they just haven't done the research. And I
right,
understand that. But also, let me tell you something. Okay. All right. You're in New York, right? And I'm just using New York because that's where this poll was conducted. You're in New York, you're in the middle of the city. How many chances in New York City do you think that you have to see a Bigfoot? I mean, how frequently do you think Bigfoot just moseys into New York City and says, "Here I am"? Probably never. But how likely are your chances of experiencing a haunting or just something paranormal in general, just something unexplained? I think a lot more people have a lot more chances to experience the unexplained in general. Now, whether that be ghosts or I've heard a lot of weird stuff. I mean, it could be, influenced by aliens and things like that.
sure,
If you're having unexplained phenomena happening, usually a lot of people their mind immediately goes to ghosts. So I think that maybe that's another reason for it is because in order for you to experience a cryptid, most of the time you have to be in an area where cryptids are going to live. I mean, these are animals after all.
right.
Um, most people are living in very urban, very city like areas and aren't experiencing that. So I think your demographic matters also. But let me tell you something right now. Listen, 39% believe in life on other planets. This isn't why is this a matter of opinion anymore? Like why is this up for debate? There is life on other planets. There is. The universe is fucking infinite. It is not possible for us to be the only ones. It's just fucking not. And that's
Well,
so disappointing.
yeah, I mean, we've proven there's bacteria in fucking water and shit. Like, that's not even if you
Right,
want
it's not even up for debate.
right, right.
And so that's when I was reading about it. It wasn't just like, because the question becomes different. Like, it's either, do you believe that aliens have come here? Right.
Well,
Or,
and you also got to remember the question, the poll, the title of the poll should really be, you know, we polled the type of people that will sit there and do a poll over the fucking phone, and we found that of those people, so and so believe in ghosts and so believe in aliens. Who are these people that they're talking to? They're not.
right. I don't know how they conducted it
Yeah,
or,
they're the type
what
of
they
people that
did.
respond to this shit. Like, I
Right.
never have you ever gotten one of these phone calls before?
No,
No. And if you did, would you do it? Maybe you would. It depends on what the topic was.
probably not.
Yeah, but maybe you wouldn't. So it's not. This isn't a very good sampling of where people are at.
It is interesting, but I've asked before. I mean, I've done a poll on like Twitter and things like that, and a lot of the times, aliens or not aliens, the ghosts beat everything, and it's weird, especially the people that follow me. It's like really ghosts. That cryptids always trail last. So that I mean, I just always thought that was strange. But again, anybody that thinks that anything other than there is life on other planets, I mean, you got a long way to go, and this show is probably not where you want to start. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it is, but I mean, that's just basics of like living. Would it really be surprising anymore if we did come out and say, yeah, there's life on other planets? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And in a world of infinite possibilities, it really shouldn't be surprising at all to anybody. We should all kind of know. But anyway, so I thought that that was interesting and notable. So I thought maybe we would talk about it.
Well,
And
I just made our own unscientific Twitter poll. So for the next, oh shit, I guess this thing will expire by the time the show airs. God damn it.
just
Well,
delete it. Well, and do it on Wednesday. Open it up on
that's
Wednesday.
so much effort. All right, if I remember, I will. Okay, never mind.
So there may or may not be a poll right now on Twitter that you may or may not be able to take. We'll see. I mean, Pat is sober, so we can at least rely on the fact that, like, if he doesn't
That's
do
a
it,
very loose definition of that fucking word right
it's
now.
if he doesn't do it, it's not because he's under the influence. But
Right, exactly.
he didn't have his crack candy yet, so
No,
crack
I've
almond
been
joy.
going through all of it, and I haven't found a crack so far.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Plenty of razor blades and hypodermic needles, but no crack yet. But yeah, so there was that. Another one that I wanted to mention was that our our buddy Tobias Whalen over at the Singular Fortean Society. You met him. He posted an article recently on singularfortean.com, and it was about this UFO sighting that took place back in, I think it was September or October. I don't remember. I should have read about this a little bit more, but I forgot until just now. Anyway, so he posted this UFO sighting, and it was accompanied with pictures, and I thought that the description was weird. Not just that, when I first saw the article, because I saw it in a preview on social media, and when I had seen the preview, the picture, I thought it was my picture. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I told you guys, well, and I told you, Pat, I showed you the pictures, and I saw this weird silver thing outside, and I went outside and started taking pictures of it, and I didn't know what it was. Whatever this dude took a picture of, and then this guy actually caught it on video, looks exactly like what the fuck I saw just a couple weeks back. And it just, I don't know, it's very exciting when things like that happen. Like, yes, it should be exciting already that I see these UFOs all the time, but it's even more exciting when something else kind of corroborates with my story, and this did. So I'm going to be sending my pictures over to Tobias and Emily, and I'm gonna let them, do whatever they want with it. But
Do you need his email address? I can give it to you
no,
if
I
you want it.
I got it.
All right. Just checking.
I'm good. I got it. But yeah, so yeah, I thought that was really cool. So definitely get on the, if you guys aren't reading Singular Fortean Society, definitely get on their website and check out their stuff. They're on all the social media platforms. And then go check out that article specifically. I guess I'll post a link here in the description. But yeah, so there was that too. That was my last piece of news.
Awesome. So what are we talking about this week, Ashers?
I don't know. Did you read the title?
I can't see it from where I'm sitting.
So everybody knows. You guys know. You clicked on the episode. We're gonna talk about old John Wayne, and not that John Wayne, but the bad John Wayne.
Jesus Christ, that was fucking terrible. Oh my God. I need to meet you in Kentucky, and we need to have an immediate training session.
On what? On John Wayne? What
Stop it.
What are we training about? And
I know you're a single mom, but you don't have to start making the dad jokes. Sorry, it's fucking painful.
Yeah, I just thought of that one on the fly. I don't even write this shit. It just comes to me.
I believe it.
What do you, Pat? You are also from Chicago, and
right.
Gacy, he's kind of a thing there, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean so spoiler alert, they executed him when I was like 14. But leading up to that, the two things that he was always, you knew about him as a kid growing up here. Like, the story was not anything, it was very fresh in everyone's mind. And the two things that I remember the most about him were number one, the paintings that he used to do that he was selling from prison. That was a big deal around here in the late 80s, early 90s, before he was executed. He would paint these creepy fucking drawings, and like all the weirdos in Chicago would have one. And the other thing was that his final meal on death row was KFC.
yeah.
And I grew up in a very strict Brown's Chicken family, where we there's the three fried chicken food chains. There's Popeyes, KFC, and Brown's, and we were Team Brown's. And hearing that KFC was the last meal of that guy, it made a lot of sense as a kid growing up, because we reviled that shit. I've since come around. I don't have such
You're
negative
like, oh, that
feelings about
fucking guy. We should have
Yeah.
known.
Yeah, exactly. Eating KFC over there like a fucking derelict. But yeah, that's as far as I knew, like, as a kid. And then I got older, and obviously I read into it a little bit. But
Sure. Wow, very interesting. Well, were you guys, I mean, especially being a teenage boy in Chicago at any point, I mean, do you think that contributed to any of your local lore or anything like that? I mean, because you were kind of his demographic.
no, I wasn't that attractive. I never had to worry. Honestly, I should watch what I say there, because it's not entirely true. It just, No, I guess, it added to the creepiness of clowns. Like, I was researching the show this week, and my kid was, like, asking me what the topic was and everything. And I was telling him, like, this was kind of the OG killer clown myth, I wouldn't say specifically that Stephen King drew, it and Pennywise from this entirely, but it definitely added to the, the conception, the kind of the mass, pop culture conception of clowns as being creepy or evil or
Sure.
something. Uh, and yeah, so outside of that, no, I mean, I never worried about, you got the standard child predator warnings growing up, but nothing specifically for Gacy. He was already arrested by the time I was old enough. Although, as we'll get into later on in the show, if my parents knew the real facts behind the case, they probably still would have been very protective of me.
Sure. Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, okay. So, I mean, getting into Gacy, Gacy's an interesting. He's an interesting guy just because he had so many victims. Most of which we don't even we're not even aware of how many yet. And we might not ever know.
Yeah, just
And
2 weeks
then
ago, they they identified one of them. They're still identifying these people.
right,
It
right.
was one of the bodies they had pulled out of the crawl space, and using 23andMe or one of these fucking things, they were able to trace the DNA back to a relative, and they identified the corpse.
Right.
You
And
know,
so, it's one of those things where we really, have no idea again the scope of exactly what happened, and we probably never will. But Gase is a very famous one, mostly because he's associated as being a killer clown, which we'll get into and talk about a little bit more. But not just that, this man was a pillar in his community, and everything that he did, he was very successful. And he was definitely a big go-getter, and he's just not the typical, what you would think for a serial killer. I mean, what we're finding out now here here we are in 2021, is that sometimes these people, serial killers don't look like who you think they do, or they don't act like who you think they do. They could be literally anybody. That's why we got people like Bundy and Gacy and so on. Even Dahmer. I mean, he was an alcoholic, but he was he wasn't very ambitious and didn't really have a lot of motivation to do anything else except for, kill people and eat them, I guess. So, I mean, it really should come as no surprise anymore. But, I mean, that's why cases like this do get really big, is because people don't expect people like Gacy to be a part of something like this. But we'll kind of start, from the beginning. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about in his childhood that I think are obviously notable. I mean, for the most part, Gacy grew up in a decent family. That I mean, his dad was a raging alcoholic and he wasn't great, but like his mom was kind of great. Like she loved him and was very protective of him, especially against his father. His dad would beat on him and stuff, and his mom would always try to, take the heat, otherwise. And so there was that. But Gacy had a head injury when he was really, really young. And then not just that, he ended up having a bunch of medical issues in his life. And there's been a lot of speculation as to whether or not these things had affected him as an adult and affected his way of thinking. And that's why he ended up kind of turning into who he was. But he was always the fat kid. He couldn't play sports. He wasn't allowed because of his medical issues that he had. His dad always referred to him as, a sissy, and he called him a queer, and all kinds of stuff. I don't know, Pat, did you dig too much into his childhood for this episode?
yeah, it's interesting that you just listened to all that stuff and were like, yeah, he didn't have that bad of a childhood. Like Jesus, I don't know what the fuck you were subjected to. Well, I do actually,
Oh,
but I'm
well, yeah.
saying,
I mean,
well, I kind of showed your true colors there. So, well, he was sexually assaulted as a kid.
he was.
One,
Yep.
one of his dad's friends, um, I don't know what the fuck he did to him, but molested him in a truck, and didn't want to tell his dad because he did the whole victim shame thing where like you think it's your fault or you think your dad's gonna be pissed at you. And from the stories that I read, which is probably the same material you saw, like the dad seemed like a little bit of a fucking psycho. Like having a father like that could definitely have an adverse reaction on a person.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
what's interesting about Gacy is that it didn't necessarily, he was always troubled, but he wasn't necessarily unsuccessful. And that, I think, is what makes him kind of unique. He did eventually get married, and coincidentally enough, the woman that he married, their family owned a chain of KFCs,
Yeah.
and Gacy managed them and did very well for them and was well liked by his father-in-law, and his dad came around at that point in his life and was very proud of him, right? And then a couple years after that, so he's in a marriage. He's doing well business wise. I mean, it's kind of like been handed to him by his in-laws, but whatever. He's doing the work. And gets arrested for sodomizing children.
Well, no, yes and no.
Well, let's
He
just
was
go with yes. Let's assume that your co-host is not.
no, that's okay. It's
Don't
okay.
shoot me down unless you have to. But my point is that it wasn't like he was in this dark, depraved era of his life. Like he had all the things there. He was, and this is where he first gets involved with the JCs as well. But it's kind of like there was no reason for him to start abusing uh, and acting on these tendencies, right?
Well, yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
they were
unless it
very
was
well, he definitely had a very dark spot in his mind somewhere. I mean, he ended up and it's not like he didn't know that the kind of the kind of fantasies that he had were incorrect. So at one point in time, after he had, gotten his first car as an adult, which his dad owned, and one time, God damn it, this cat, I have a cat that won't leave me alone. Go, get out of here. I'm trying to spray him. Go. You can't be a part of the show. His dad bought his card. He would make payments on this card towards his dad, and his dad would take the keys, like and like basically whenever he wanted to. So even as an adult, and this was like young adult, Gacy didn't have full freedom away from his father. So what he did was he bought another set of keys and he took the car and he left and he went and he moved to Vegas and he spent a couple of weeks in Vegas living in a mortuary and he would so he saw dead bodies a lot and saw them embalming them and stuff like that. Well, he would actually like crawl into the caskets with these bodies and like hang out with them, and he knew that he was fucked up for this, and so he after this had happened, he kind of freaked out and then he called his mom and he went back home. And so that was kind of the first sign that he was sick. In a way that's deeper than just I'm a closeted homosexual. You know what I mean? Like it was much deeper than that. He definitely had some type of depravity, even then. And so
you
could it
know
have
what's
been oh go ahead.
I was going to say it's interesting to talk about Gacy as a homosexual and whether or not you know was he, or was it, I mean, like, okay, point blank, I mean, would you consider him to be gay?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was just, he was a gay guy who happened to be a serial killer. How much do you think that those two worlds intersect if you were to make a Venn diagram? You know what I mean? Like how
Oh,
much how much overlap is there?
I'd say there's stuff. I'm not gonna say that all gay people are serial killers, but I mean, there's
No, I
definitely
wasn't asking you to. That's no, of course not. That's entirely, Cody Rigsby is not a serial killer. Let me just put that on the fucking table
there
right
are
now.
definitely people that are. I mean, Dahmer's story is very similar to Gacy's. He was very ashamed of his sexuality, so
Right.
he confused it with necrophilia,
Which, I
and
mean, Gacy in the story you just recounted
it's
exhibited, but
doing the same
it's
kind of stuff. Yeah.
it's just so interesting to me because as this story balloons, I feel like as we get more and more into the story, the the homosexual aspect becomes more and more of almost a focal point to it. And it's a weird thing to get to up front, like, is this is more than just somebody who's ashamed of their sexuality, although you have to wonder how much of a part does that play in it. Like, it's definitely like because is it about, because sometimes they'll say rape isn't about the sex, right? So the fact that he's raping and murdering young men, is it about the sex with the young men, or is it about, which would make it like a, which would tie it back to the homosexuality, or is it just that I like torturing and murdering people, and one way to torture them is to stick shit up their ass that they don't want in their ass or something like that, you know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
he never, ever, ever raped and murdered any women, ever. Any girls,
and he
any
was
women.
married too. I mean, like, that's a pretty far. Now maybe he was doing that for the approval of his father, but like getting married, like, either you got to think you're at least half straight, or you got to be really committed to that fucking story, because that, this was in the 60s and 70s. There was men that didn't get married. He didn't have to get married. It's not like there was, unless it was something specifically with his father, there wasn't a whole bunch of societal pressure telling him that he had to do it. He could have sidestepped that. But
Well, I
he
mean, but there kind of was because he was into politics. So I mean, a family man is more of a credible man when it comes to I don't think there's any. I mean, can you name a politician who is not married? You know what I mean? And so I
Trudeau,
think that was probably who.
Trudeau, right?
I don't know who the hell.
The
I'll be
prime
honest with
minister,
you.
the hunky Canadian guy.
I don't politic. Well, I don't fucking
Well,
know anything. I don't know anything about U.S. politics, let alone fucking Canadian politics.
they're all North American scum. As
Give
far
a shit
as
about fucking politics.
NAFTA.
They're all they're all fighting on the same team. So fuck those. It's us against them, you guys. It's
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But anyway, but typically, I mean, that it makes you look better. But no, his second wife, I mean, they had a very tumultuous relationship, and she, says that they like he had sex with her, and then never had sex with her ever again. Told her he was never gonna have sex with her ever again.
You
He was
know that
very open about being bisexual. He had gay porn all over the place. He had men coming and going out of the house. He was gay.
but they also did wife swapping, and he would bring people home from the bar to bang her and shit. Like, that was. I'm not saying that it wasn't, the marriage that she always dreamed of when she was a little girl, but like, it seems like she was into the shenanigans as well, which is maybe why you thought, hell, I'll give it a shot another time if I have a kinky partner. Maybe I don't have to hide all this shit and do all. I don't have to. I can bring the guys home, and we can just, you know, the house will just be a fuck pit. You
Well,
won't
I
have to
mean,
worry about, you know.
I don't remember. They weren't together. The Sim and the second wife weren't together for very long. Like she ended up I mean she moved in, and then they got into big fights, and she one day packed up her kids and herself and just left them there, which is kind of where things really got out of control. And so I don't remember exactly how long they were together, but he was with the first wife for a while. He actually had children with the first wife.
Right.
And he had kind of at that point in his life had kind of done everything that he really had kind of set out to do, and that was when his father's approval. And his dad, he even says that his dad eventually apologized and was actually really proud of him. And then he went to jail for molesting a 15-year-old boy. So I mean,
Right.
and that kind of ruined everything. So like when that happened, so you like we mentioned, he was part of the JCs, which is I don't I'm not entirely sure what the JCs do. Do you know that one?
It's like a
Do you
men's club, but it's not, it's
It's like a
not tied to
political
like,
men's club.
yeah, but it's not tied to like any kind of like esoteric order like the Masons or something like that. Like, it's a more secular, um just like an Elks Lodge or something like that.
Yeah, and we got stuff like that here. I just think I don't know. Our JCs, is that across the country, or is that just a Chicago thing? I don't know.
No, because he started in Iowa with it.
Oh,
That's
that's true. That's
the
true.
the 15-year-old he assaulted was one of his partners, or his fellow
It
JC's son.
Yeah, it was and so, which was really fucked up. I mean, so he, sexually molested this boy, and, the boy went to his dad, and they were going to convict him and have him put in a jail. And while he is waiting on trial for things to happen, he paid somebody to go and send a message to this 15-year-old to get him to stop talking. And so the 15-year-old did. He went and kicked this kid's ass, or I think it was an 18-year-old that did it. Went and kicked the 15-year-old kid's ass, and then the
Hmm.
15-year-old told on him. So then he admitted, yeah, Gacy sent me to do it. And he got in trouble for that too. So Gacy was sentenced to 10 years initially for this,
Served
and
18 months.
Yeah, he served 18 months, but he was a model fucking citizen in prison.
Mm.
I mean, just absolutely, he did a lot for the prisoners there. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, he worked his way up in the kitchen. He got all of the prisoners raises. He actually ended up being responsible for them building a mini golf inside of the prison. I mean, he did a lot there. And so they released him back to his mom. The only stipulation for him to go back was if he went back to Chicago, and he did. And while he was in Chicago, very shortly afterwards, I mean, he got in trouble two more times. He got in trouble
Le-
in February of 1971 for
less
sexually
than
assaulting.
yeah.
Yeah, for sexually assaulting another teen, and then a couple of months after that, another one. But both of them didn't. They didn't follow through in court with what was, with what was being said. Probably because Gacy was using a lot of the same tactics that his father was using, and probably gay shaming these kids. And we know that he's capable of sending a message or manipulation because he's been doing it at this point. Like, we know he's been doing stuff like that. So that's probably what he was doing. But he gets out, and then he starts working his way up the ranks again within his community. He started running for the local government there, Democratic Party, and hanging out with those people. That's when the famous clown came in. He had two different clowns. He had Pogo, which a lot of people are more familiar with, Pogo Clown, which is weird, because then he also had Patches, and they kind of had comedy and tragedy personalities. And so Patches was kind of more of the darker one, while Pogo was more of the lighthearted one. So I don't know why people know that one more. But either way, he would do his clown work just throughout the community. But it wasn't really like it was a big deal. I mean, sometimes he would get off, doing service somewhere else, and then he would be in his clown get up, and he would go drink at the local bar, as Pogo or Patches or whatever. And but it's not like this was like part of his act. It wasn't like he had to dress up like the clown to kill people. Like, that wasn't his thing. But anyway, so I'll backtrack a little bit. So, he had his wife and his kids. Whenever he was arrested, his wife and his kids left, and they never came back ever again. He never talked to them ever again. Who knows what happened to them? She might have came forward a little bit later in life and discussed things and whatnot, but leave them alone. Leave the kids alone, leave the wife alone. They didn't do this. And but like I mentioned, he ended up getting remarried. And you're right, the wife his wife was also really into kind of a lot of this perverse stuff that he was into, which I guess I should use perverse slightly, because she wasn't into raping boys and killing people, but she liked the party. I mean, and that's
It
fine.
was a good time. I don't know what to tell you.
So
you know.
right. I mean, they they enjoyed themselves quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, that marriage didn't last very long. Like I said before, she left, and that was that. I mean, and then from that point on, he kind of he that's when he started up the construction company, and that other guy worked for him for a while. God, what was his name? Oh my gosh, the other killer. We talked about him on the show.
Oh,
Oh
yeah,
my god.
from the Ripper Crew.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, worked with Gacy for a while. And I think we kind of might have talked about this before, but do you think they knew that the other one was also fucked up?
Yeah, well, it's Richard Getch, Robin Getch, and the Chicago
Mm.
Rippers. Yeah, I mean, I will get. Let me know when you want me to pull the trigger on that, and I'll get into all that shit.
Go ahead.
Because Gacy had a lot of associates through that construction company.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, he Gacy, something that I know a lot about, started a subcontractor business basically where he would do small jobs, and it's how he met a lot of his victims, and it's also, according to him, how he met a lot of his accomplices as well. So he had this construction company where he would hire young men for day labor. They'd be doing things like fixing gutters or laying concrete for driveways, or just random shit that, like, you're not going to hire a big construction company to do, and you're doing it mostly for small residential places or commercial outfits or whatever, right? So this gave him the opportunity to bring in a lot of labor. Like he'd have young men coming and going. A lot of these guys hard up working for cash. You didn't need to be terribly qualified to do this shit. He'd have guys on crews, and if someone was good, they'd last. If not, then fuck them. We wouldn't use them on the next job. And this is where he found a lot of his victims from, right? But it also, coincidentally enough, ended up being a place where, like we mentioned just a minute ago, Robin Getch from the Chicago Ripper crew worked and knew Gacy. Um, and then something that I came across last night is he worked with a guy named Philip Pask, who would go on to be. So Philip Pask, actually, before he started working for Gacy, was a Chicago lifeguard, and for the city, was a lifeguard for the city of Chicago. And before, I'm telling the story all fucking out of order. So Philip Pask goes to jail for some thefts and murders and just like doing violent criminal shit. While he's in jail, he meets John Norman. Now, John Norman was this guy from Texas who had basically like a escort service that he was running out of the classified ads of like magazines geared towards gay dudes, right? So in the back hey, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, send $3 in a self-addressed stamped envelope to this PO box, and then what you would get in return is a list of young men with pictures of them and like their stats and everything, and then you could basically make an appointment for these men to come to your house and live with you for 3 days for sex. And then it was a human trafficking ring, okay,
Right.
that
Okay.
was done through the classified ads of these newspapers. The police caught wind of it. They raided this apartment in New York and found index cards with like 30,000 names and addresses of clients, people that were renting these young men. Okay. So this guy goes to jail. While he's in jail, he meets Philip Pask. Philip Pask becomes friends with John Norman. And while John Norman's in jail, he's still running this operation through the mail, and the jail has no idea what the fuck he's doing. Philip Pask gets out of jail. He runs this organization for John Norman out of Chicago while Norman finishes up his prison sentence. John Norman gets released from jail, and the Chicago Tribune, realizes that Philip Pask is working with John Norman because they both share a P.O. box at the post office, and of like the same, they're both sending their mail to the same P.O. box, right? So the newspaper makes this connection between these two people. They find out that Philip Pask is working as a city of Chicago lifeguard at a fire station for like youths. All right. And like the fire station is a swimming pool. He's the lifeguard. It's a bunch of kids. All right. Obviously, he gets fired immediately. But who does he get hired by? John Wayne Gacy. So now he works for Gacy's construction company. And some of the thing about Philip Pask is that he was tall and he had very bad skin. He had like a really pockmarked face, and sometimes he would like to dress in women's clothing, right? And a couple of the victims that escaped Gacy had said that they thought that he had people with him when these like rapes were happening, and he was in the house. That people were in the house when Gacy was like attacking him. We can get into Gacy's whole thing, what he would do to these guys in a minute. But one of the recurring descriptions was that there was a tall person that was in the room, or a person that was dressed as a woman, but they knew it was a man or something. So there's been like suggestions by some of the victims that survived that Philip Pask may have been involved with Gacy. They definitely worked together, but that he might have also been involved in Gacy's kidnappings and tortures and shit. And then, I mean, even Gacy himself had said several times that he had accomplices and stuff, and he kind of went back and forth about who they were. Um, so yeah, that's what I got on that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, well, and Gacy has always said that he's had accomplices. One of the first things that he asked when he was arrested was whether or not his accomplices had been arrested too. And they're like, "What do you mean?"
Right.
and and so he had always maintained. I mean, there's even record of certain victims that ended up falling under. The Gacy had been tried with that. Gacy wasn't even in the same state when they were killed.
Yeah, there's some suggestion that they might have been using Gacy's house, and that was why there were so many bodies in that crawl space. That this Delta project, they were trafficking these young men around the country. Number one, and most of it was just for prostitution, but some of these young men got fucking killed, and Gacy's house was a place to dump the bodies.
Yeah.
And and that's why these accomplices of his, they weren't so much accomplices in the sense of Gacy was the ringleader and these people were killing underneath him. It may have been more of they were adjacent to Gacy, or Gacy might have been actually one of their underlings, and this was a much bigger operation that Gacy was doing a smaller part of. And oh, that's yeah, okay, that's what I got.
Well, and people were in and out. I mean, he did have, these people that were working for him, these young men that were working for him that he was also sleeping with, or, whatever it was they were doing, like that would come live with him, for periods of time. I mean, he had people kind of in and out of the house all the time. And like realistically, he says he didn't stop putting people in the crawl space because he got arrested. He stopped putting people in the crawl space because there wasn't any more room.
Right. That's exactly what he says.
That's
And
exactly what he says. Yeah.
what's interesting is that so yeah, some of the people that he murdered, or yeah, that he murdered, legally speaking, um were drifters, or they were young men that were hard on their luck, that started working for his construction company. uh when Gacy was finally brought to justice, it was by the Des Plaines Police Department, which is where he was living at the time. What's interesting, though, is that for as long as his murder spree went on for, it was a lot of young men from Chicago that were missing as well. Chicago police never got involved. They had aspects of this case. Gacy had been suggested as a suspect that they never followed up on. They really, I don't want to say they dropped the ball on it, because it's so like the evidence at times was so overwhelming towards him, and they did so little, that it really does look like they were just letting him fucking do whatever. And a lot of the victims that went missing were younger white guys, high school age white guys, that lived in nice parts of the city. uh
Right.
One of the I was reading where his victims went missing from. It's like all like around where I work, actually, like Edgewater, Lakeview, Rogers Park, like, decent parts of the city. These weren't necessarily all, not that it would have made it any more justifiable or better, but these weren't necessarily all like broken, forgotten, poor little kids. These were like, your average middle class white kid that went
Right.
missing. And the parents, like, are screaming for justice. Why can't anyone do something? The police do nothing. And then Chicago police, who's it's happening in their own backyard, they knew they had some kind of, it wouldn't have taken a whole lot of into intuitiveness to connect the dots and figure out there was some kind of person operating, and all these different disappearances, and fit the same MO. And nothing
Yeah.
until shit started happening in Des Plaines, and then a local suburban police force, much smaller, got involved, and then they cracked the case almost, fairly quickly.
Well, because I mean, Gacy had initially confessed to 45 murders. Okay, he was convicted of 33, right? And so he had confessed to 45, but that's murder victims. Gacy had been doing this song and dance of raping and torturing men, young men, kids, pretty much for years. And so he had some people that he just raped and tortured and then let go. One of his victims claims that during his rape and torture, somebody else was there. They saw
Right.
somebody else there. They were watching what was going on, and he had maintained that that's what was. And then like, that he knew somebody else was there. Didn't know who it was, but I mean, so that's not really an accident. The police have on record Gacy because they followed him around. It wasn't just like they went and searched his house and they found a whole bunch of weird stuff, but it took a minute for them to actually, pin Gacy. I think they searched his house twice and then still couldn't actually arrest him for anything. And
Uh,
then he confessed, and that's the only reason why he was arrested to begin with. And that's where they found the bodies in the crawl space. But
they had him under
um,
surveillance. He couldn't handle the pressure. There
right.
was if there's I read a couple accounts of like the last 12 hours that they had him under surveillance and he was losing his fucking shit.
He was, yeah, and
Yeah.
went to his lawyer and confessed everything. And but while he was under surveillance, I mean, Gacy had met up with a couple of the workers for this construction company,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they had some strange conversations that kind of implied that maybe these people knew what was going on. And but the police just never really, I mean, they just, they had their guy, and that's all they really cared about. They didn't care about investigating further. And I don't know if it's just because homosexuality in the 70s was weird and they just didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to hear all the details. It was very strange the way that it was handled. But then again, I mentioned before, Gacy was not just some guy. He was involved in politics.
Yeah.
He had a lot of friends. I mean, he would have these parties where they would have upwards of like 400 people. And these are high profile people that would show up to Gacy's parties, and where he was the special, guest of honor and things like that. So I mean, you definitely got to wonder what was going on there, especially because when this all started happening, like with the JCs and stuff like that, that's kind of when it was starting to get out that these people were, having these sex parties and they were wife swapping and trading porn and things like that.
Well, so 6 years after his first murder and 7 months before he was finally arrested, there's a picture of Gacy with Jimmy Carter's wife, the first lady,
Yeah,
where they met at some function. And for him to have met her and get the picture with her, he had to be cleared by the Secret Service.
right.
So that's one of those things where is it that they're that inept at their job, or is it that the system is that corrupt that he was flagged as being okay? You know what I mean? Despite the fact that he had already been arrested for sodomizing a 15-year-old back in Iowa. You know what I mean? That he had already and then intimidating witnesses. That he had been arrested twice 6 months after his initial parole in Chicago for sexually assaulting young men. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like all this stuff now granted, maybe the Secret Service didn't know about the murders he was doing and the bodies he was stashing in the crawl space, but he had already had quite the fucking reputation at that point, and they still let him get his photo op with the Democratic Party with the Carter's wife and shit. So I mean, it's a lot of like it's a lot of really suspect stuff, and I mean, spoiler alert, I honestly think when I finally knowing like researching this case and always knowing that there was a little bit more there, I really didn't know what the missing piece was. And finally getting to the Delta Project and that connection, and when you see that he was associated with those people, it kind of makes everything make a little bit more sense. I feel like that's the missing piece in the Gacy story, and that I think he was just a low-level lieutenant of a much larger organization. And I know that sounds like really fucking woo-woo, but that's my 2 cents. That's what you came here, that's why you're listening to this week's podcast, right? That's what I'm floating out there for
You
you
want to get the
guys.
fun stuff. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, nobody's ever really proven that. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like in my perspective, as somebody that really likes is like the right word, somebody that has a strong interest in true crime. As much I've read about Gacy before, of course, but the extent of the stories that I knew was just that, um, it that he just was gross and he just killed these young men and boys because he was a closeted homosexual. And I don't know, he just like, well, and that's another thing. I mean, it wasn't like he was killing them just to hide the fact that he was touching them or whatever. It's because he was like actually violent, like he played these horrible fucked up games with them. And
The one that sticks with me is where he can't. So what he would do is he'd bring him back to the house and he'd say that he knew magic and he did all this
yeah.
stuff, and he'd get them to handcuff themselves, and then while they were handcuffed, he'd fucking rape them.
Oh yeah.
And the line was, "Do you want to see a trick?" and he does the handcuff thing, and then he gets out of it. So then he handcuffs them so they can try to get out of it. And he says, "Well, the trick is that if you want to get out of the handcuffs, you got to have the key."
Right.
And at that point, they realize there is no trick. They've just been handcuffed. They're in this guy's bedroom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like he would kneel on their chest and he'd force feed him his fucking cock,
Yep.
and then he'd roll him over and he would just fucking sodomize him. And then, but what's crazy to me, what's so crazy to me is that then he would sometimes let him go,
He would sometimes let him go. Yeah, he would.
thinking like, I just did this to you, and I want to let me kind of go off with this for a second here. I just did this to you, and I think so little of you that and this whole process, then I'm not even afraid. I'm gonna let you go. And what are you gonna do? You're gonna tell someone they're not gonna believe you? Fuck you.
Yeah.
That blows my fucking mind. And except I had something very, very similar happen to me when I was in my early 20s. I was delivering pizzas for this place, and it started off really cool, and I was kind of friendly with my boss and all this stuff, and we would hang out and have a few beers after work. And he hired this like cook to come in and like help out in the kitchen because the business started doing better, right? And the cook that came in was a real weird scumbag. He was missing an eye and he had a knife slash. He looked like a James Bond villain, where he like Scar or something. You know what I mean? And he one night it was just the three of us and we were finishing up, and the guy at the pizza place, they were joking around about like I don't know how it came up, but he told me this story about a friend of his that went to a bar one night and met this woman at the bar, and they had a few drinks, and he goes back to the woman's apartment, and him and the woman are fooling around, and she handcuffs him, and second the handcuff snaps onto like the bed frame or whatever, the closet door opens up and this big guy jumps out and fucking rapes the guy all night long, and then lets him
Wow.
go. And he tells me this story, and I was like, holy shit. And he goes, yeah, he's like, and I go, well, why didn't he tell the cops? And the guy started laughing. He goes, if that happened to you, you tell the cops. And I'm like, fuck yeah, I would. What do you,
Right.
of course I would. The first place I'd fucking go after the hospital is to the fucking police. And he goes, no, that's what you say now, but wait until that fucking happens to you. And wait until it's happening. And the whole time the guy's fucking you all night long, he's telling you, if you tell anybody, I'm going to fucking kill you. If you tell anybody, I'm going to fucking kill you. By the time that night's over with, when you left that fucking house, you wouldn't say a goddamn word to anybody. And I was like, dude, and I quit that job that night because it freaked me out so much that I had that conversation with this guy that he told me, and he was probably high and drunk and just talking shit, but it like fucking shook me to my core. You know what I mean? Because it made me think like, I didn't even want to, I assume I would tell somebody, but like, I don't know. Some people have that mentality where like, no, you wouldn't. Like they honestly believe that you can get into someone's head and you can torture them and fuck with them so badly that no, they wouldn't tell. And reading like this Gacy shit and what he used to do to these guys, and thinking about that shit that my ex boss, thank God, told me that night, like it just made this weird correlation. I don't know. I mean, it's
Well, it
crazy.
happens a lot. I mean, especially as a
Yeah,
woman, we don't report a lot of things, and so it definitely happens more often than you think. But especially for somebody, if that's somebody that just did this to you, is John Wayne Casey, who happens to be really highly regarded within your community. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he was just, again, he wasn't just a terrible person. He was very likable. He was very personable. He was somebody. And he's like, nobody's gonna believe you. I fucking dress up as a clown for children's parties. Like, nobody's gonna believe you.
right.
They're just gonna believe that you're gay, and I'm just gonna tell them that you were compliant and that you're gay. And I've gotten away with this before. And you know what I mean? So like those are the kinds of thoughts that, he was implanting in these people's heads who he let go, and they just and they'll tell you that because I mean, initially, he was the cool guy. I mean, they'd go to his house and they'd hang because it wasn't always like it was just one person. he would have parties where all these young kids would show up, and they would like do things like watch porn together, and or I guess was it stag films or whatever. They'd watch porn, and he'd give them alcohol and drugs that they couldn't get otherwise, and he was giving them money. They were working, and then like well, we were kind of talking when we did the episode with your buddy Lee, actually, about having that coach and that cool, having that cool guy that you'd go there, and then just kind of one thing leads to another. I mean, Gacy was offering some of these guys, he was paying a good amount of money to do stuff with them, and
Yeah, it
so
it sounds to me like he was more of a pimp, and unbeknownst to some of the men that lost their lives or they found in the crawl space, maybe they thought they were just, being pimped out to these older guys or these other people, these other pillars of the community or whoever he associated with. Because
right,
he's got all these friends that are covering his ass 6 ways to Sunday, and all he's doing is hanging out
right,
with young prostitutes. Okay, you know, no, he was probably more of a pimp and a garbage man. And he set up, and these young kids would come over thinking like, oh, I'm gonna get paid $800 to blow this fucking you know business owner. Or the grocery store owner. I'm gonna blow this dentist, and I'm gonna get
right,
fucking $700. And what they don't realize is, no, that was last week. This week you're gonna get fucking killed. And then
right, for whatever reason.
Gacy had the place where the guys could come in, they could fuck these young guys, and then they could kill them, and then he'd dispose of the body. You
And what
know,
do you think? I mean, why do you, because obviously, those, the dead people can't come back and say, well, there was this many people that killed us. I mean, let's just assume that it was just Gacy, I guess. What do you think escalated it from being just one of these, sexual assaults to murder? I mean, why would he jump that far?
well, that's something that I think the stereotypical thing is, oh, because killing is the ultimate rush. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like it's he I read somewhere that he described it as better than the most mind-numbing orgasm was killing another human being. I don't know. I've never killed anyone. I've come pretty hard in my life, but I mean, I can't really compare the two. you know, uh, I've
Yeah,
said some
well.
really weird shit while nutting before. Let me put it like that.
Oh,
But
yeah, okay. Good for
but
you.
I can't. Yeah, I should have been there. But no, it's just I don't get it. Like I think that it could be a sex thing. It could be to heighten his own arousal thing, or or it could have been 30 different guys living out some kind of weird snuff fantasy. And Gacy being like, no, I get it, man. I get it. I've done it before too. You want to try it before? And then who knows? Maybe they had fucking cameras in there. Maybe that was the beta test of the fucking Epstein Island was Gacy's shitty little house in the burbs, where they give the guys the chance to do this shit and then fucking blackmail or something. I have no idea.
I mean, the dude was obviously fucking depressed. They found an 18-inch dildo in Gacy's house.
Was that for him though, or was that for his victims?
I have no idea. I don't know if I want to know.
Right. Well, I
To
mean,
be
at that
honest with you,
point,
I'm not there.
who gives a shit about someone's intestines when you're going to kill them and bury them in the crawl
Oh my
space in
god.
10
I
minutes
can't
anyway?
imagine. What a terrible, fucking horrible, sick, disgusting, awful way to die. I mean, really, that's
Well, right. And I think my theory of him being a pimp and a garbage man makes more sense because how could somebody it makes more sense for him to be slightly human still because
yeah,
that means that he only committed that crime a handful of times instead of 33. You know what I mean? Because at that point, if you've brutalized and murdered that many fucking people, how how are you then turning around and going out in public and like Dahmer was a recluse. Like no one ever talks about Dahmer as being this charismatic life of the party that everyone fucking loved. Dahmer wasn't married fucking twice. You know what I mean? Richard
yeah,
Ramirez wasn't a pillar of the fucking community. I'm not saying there's not charismatic serial killers, but I think by and large, most of them that do the real fucked up shit, they're very antisocial. They're very weird, and they're not blending in as seamlessly unless they're white. They're not blending in as seamlessly as people like to think. Gacy was different. Gacy was way too social. He was way too charismatic,
Yeah.
to have I feel to have done that to that many people and that short a spirit period of time where he was doing it like once a month.
Oh, yeah.
He was literally doing it like once a month. He was kidnapping a person off the fucking street, right? He was going through all of this whole song and dance, brutalizing them, disposing of the fucking bodies, all this shit. Like, damn, dude, take it. Like, the
Calm,
guy's
calm
busier than
down
I
there.
am. He's busier than I
Chill.
am. You know what I mean? Jesus.
I mean, but no, you're right, and because it's not like Gacy wasn't a successful individual even after he served prison time. I mean, he went on to go have this contracting business, and he did good. You know, he succeeded in every area of his life, and did even as a prisoner. You know, it's impressive the shit that the guy did. And you know, he has to have some degree of likability there in order to even get to that point. But he had friends.
Oh, yeah, I think it's the friends too. I think it's the likability. I think it's the unfortunate advantage that a fucking middle aged white guy has in this country or had back then. I think that was a part of it. Like, he looked the part. He was likable. He was passable, and I think he also, he knew how to get in good with guys. I think a lot of it was him schmoozing these people, having these parties and getting everyone kind of drunk and getting everyone having things get a little risque, and you find something that these people are into and you give them something that no one else can do and you become their dealer and then you blackmail them for the shit that you sold them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or he just got plugged into this Delta Project thing and he didn't even have to build it on his own. They talent scouted him and they put him to work. And he was
Yeah.
just an extension of this. Because that's what the Delta Project was doing, was trafficking young men, sometimes just for sex, sometimes for murder. You know?
Well, and there's some people that even believe that another killer, another really strange case, Dean Coral, they think that he is also tied into this. Now, he was active in the 70s as well in Texas, and that was a weird thing because what had happened was Dean was actually shot and killed by one of the kids that was kind of helping him lure victims to his house, and he killed almost 30 teenage boys that he was doing the same shit to, that Gacy was doing. And so when this kid killed this guy, and then the kid and then another accomplice kid came forward, they kind of told this crazy tale of sex trafficking and torture and all this crazy stuff. And there's a lot of people that think that, again, even though he was operating in Texas, that this was all part of the same ring. It was all part of the Delta Project, and it was all the same thing.
Well, it does go back to the Franklin Bank. Do you know that story? Oh, I shouldn't have said it. God damn it.
Uh-oh.
This is one of the really famous ones about it was a congressman or something in North Dakota who found out that it was. I'm not. You know what? Just look up Franklin Bank. I'm not even.
Okay.
I don't want to butcher it. I don't want to butcher it
Oh,
because
no.
I'm gonna mumble and stutter my way through it. I'm gonna get half the shit fucking wrong anyway. Just look up Franklin Bank. It's a very famous case. It's one of these things where like there was money being embezzled from this thing, and it started off as one kind of investigation and just accidentally goes sideways and blows up into this whole entire fucking enormous supposed conspiracy of human trafficking of young boys all across the United States. And there's some real wild aspects of the story about tunnels and trains and fucking shit, but I'll let listeners look up on it. And that's not directly connected to Gacy, but the Delta Project is. So it kind of like the narrative starts with this program, then morphs into the Delta Project, and then that's where Gacy gets involved.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, it just seems like the more you kind of dive down these rabbit holes, the more you kind of start, really finding some leads in the other things. And it's interesting because the same, within the Dean Coral case, this kind of the same thing happened, was that there's these unanswered questions that don't really make a lot of sense, that the police just kind of refuse to follow up on. And why? I guess, why not entertain the idea for a minute? I mean, I understand there's some conspiracies out there that are just absolutely insane, like the earth is flat. We know that it's not. But um there's some out there that we know did happen. Like we've talked about MK Ultra, we know that happened. Like that's real. And so, I mean, they're not all crazy. Why not just open up an investigation on these things and see if there's a tie there? I mean, are we ever going to do it now? I mean, this was something that seemed to happen primarily in the 70s. And, why? I guess what would be the point now, unless we had an inkling that it was still happening, which, I suppose is possible. Um, just very interesting, very interesting when you really start, like I said, chasing those loose ends and trying to tie them up, because a lot of it, there's a lot of things that don't make sense. What was Gacy talking about that night when he was under surveillance? I mean, it seemed pretty clear that the people he was talking to were very much aware that there was a bunch of dead people. Why didn't they talk to those people? Why? I mean, it's very odd. But either way, Gacy was eventually executed. Of course, when he went to prison, eventually for the rest of his life, he was a model prisoner again. Like Pat, you were saying, he sold a bunch of paintings. You can get a Gacy painting, they're out there somewhere. But he was eventually executed. He did have KFC and a bunch of other stuff for his last meal. Pat, have you ever thought about your last meal?
Yeah, because a lot because of the Gacy thing, because his last meal was KFC, and that got leaked to the press. I would actually, I that's something that I'd invite people to investigate a little bit further, because I think that was his requested last meal, and he got so angry when it was leaked to the press and it became a news story, that he actually changed it to something like way more expensive and lavish, just to fuck with the prison and make them, like, at the last minute have to come up with something different. But all he wanted was KFC. Um, what would my last meal be? I don't know. Teenage boy flesh, so that I can get superpowers and break out of the prison or whatever these people eat it for.
That's not what you're.
So I looked up that Franklin credit thing. This is it. It'll take 2 seconds just to spit out. Like, here's the deal. So basically, in the late '80s, they were doing a Republican senator of Nebraska, John DeCamp, who's the most decorated Vietnam vet of all time, was investigating the Franklin Credit Union for embezzling funds, and it was run by a fellow Republican that was, I guess, his, like, running against him or something, by the name of Larry King. No relation to, obviously, the CNN talk show host Larry King. But as he was investigating the Franklin Credit Union, uh, they found out that it was actually it was this pedophile connection, like, ring thing. And they talked to a lot of victims who said that, testified against King and various elite figures in American politics and entertainment. What ensued was multiple assassinations of key witnesses, a reluctance to investigate by the FBI and other investigative whatever departments, witness intimidation, and a complete folly of justice. So yeah, the Franklin Credit Union, look into that. And the connection to that back to Gacy was when they were interviewing some of the trafficking victims. One of them mentioned uh Philip Paskey by name. Philip Paskey was the guy that did time with John Norman, who ended up working with John Wayne Gacy at his construction company, who got the lifeguard job at the city of Chicago, who would cross dress as a woman, who had a pockmarked face. That Philip Paskey, after all the Gacy shit's over, ends up being tied to the Franklin Credit Union human trafficking scandal.
God,
Sorry.
that's crazy.
I know I feel like I'm just, like, regurgitating all the shit, but
No,
there you
it's
go.
okay. That's fine. Wow. Yeah, I had no idea that was. I mean, come on. Is it really that much of a small world? Probably not. No. Probably
No.
not.
And
No.
my last meal would be Burrito Station. So there you go.
Burrito station. Gacy had, I'll tell you, Gacy's final meal was a dozen deep fried shrimp. I looked it up while you were talking about that. A dozen deep fried shrimp, a bucket of KFC's original recipe chicken, French fries, a pound of strawberries, and a bottle of Diet Coke.
And then, does it say anything about him changing it at the last minute?
No, it
I
doesn't.
remember that being on the news. That might be.
Well, that was yeah. I mean, like you said, that was kind of your time. If you remember that, he was very mad. I mean, there's like a whole. There was a website I found one time where you can look at inmates, at people on death row's last meals, like coming and going. So
That's
I
fun.
don't know. I don't know why. Like people are just into that. Well, because that's really not something. I mean, is that something that we think about every day? When we think about something like our very last meal, I mean, then you kind of got to face your own mortality, and that's a hard. It's a hard thing to think about. I mean,
Yeah.
because some of them are very weird, and they kind of are a mishmash of different things. But yeah, there was I don't know, I can't promise that I'll ever find that website again, but I remember looking at it once, and that was the thing. Also, his final words were
Go
"kiss
fuck yourself. Yeah,
kiss
kiss
my
my ass.
ass." Yeah, "kiss my ass" is what it was. So that's nice guy, that Gacy. He's
Right.
it's a good dude, but obviously not. But I mean, that's John Wayne Gacy. I'm sure you guys have heard the story before. You might have maybe even heard it told this way with all these weird ties and connections and the different perspective as to why. Or maybe you were like me and you just never really heard it told that way, and Gacy was completely at fault. But there it is, the infamous killer clown. Pat, you got any final words on Gacy or anything that we talked about?
Don't let people handcuff you unless you know them
Don't.
reasonably well.
Just well, that's true. Yeah, don't
Yeah.
do it. Um, that's probably not a good idea. Like, I don't care how fun you think that person is. Like, they're not fun. They're John Wayne Gacy, and like, you should probably leave.
Right.
Don't go to someone's house and let them show you magic tricks because that's where it starts. That's how I mean, that's how you end up having a bad time. In the crawl space of the Gacy house. That house isn't there anymore, is it?
I don't know. It was there for a while.
What?
It's
What
not
do you
that far.
mean?
Yeah, they didn't tear it down right away. It's it's not that far. I don't know.
You should stop wherever it was and whatever it is now. I'll take pictures for me.
Or just come to Chicago and we'll drive past it.
Oh, I mean, I
I'll,
will,
I'll
but
let you out at the end of the block and I'll pick you up at the other side so you can walk past it.
just not look weird. That would look 1000%. They would know exactly why I'm there. Like, this fucking weird girl coming to look at the
There's
Gacy
another weird
house.
one. Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine like moving in there or moving into anywhere around there because it would be just flooded with like you know
Sadness
ne'er
and
do wells.
ne'er do wells. Well, that's true. It's probably a very famous street now. Oh, well, I don't know. I think that the longer things go on, I mean, I'm sure they expect people to come check out that area. But I think that for the most part, it's not like it's a hot spot. The Chris Watts house, like that house is probably way more famous right now than the Gacy house is. But again, I don't think the house is there
Yeah,
anymore.
it's been demolished.
Okay.
So it was turned into a vacant lot in 1984. It stood vacant until 1988. People bought it and then built a new house on it. And then as of 2019, it was currently for sale.
Oh,
So there is a house there now, but it's not the same house.
and it's for sale.
Right. For $500,000. Well, this was 2019. You could probably get it a little bit cheaper now.
Is that market? Is that market price around there? Or
Norwood Park, like, yeah, I don't know. It's the burbs. It's out west. It's one of the nicer, I mean, I could see it potentially. It's a nice house. Let me put it like that. Like, it's not a mansion or anything, but,
well,
whatever. I wouldn't fucking move in there.
it's
I'll tell you
probably
that much.
haunted as fuck. Yeah.
I wouldn't even why would you want to live there? Like you could live anywhere else. I would not want to live there.
I don't
And if
know.
here's the thing, I think that like they totally screwed the pooch by tearing that old one down because no one's gonna want to live there, right? But if you had the original house as it was, someone will fucking buy that thing.
You could turn it into a little museum, a little Gacy
Right.
museum.
Right. If you raise it to the ground and then try to pretend like that's not what fucking happened in that spot, no one's gonna buy that.
Right. Everybody knows what happened there. Like it's no. I'm sure the neighbors all know.
Right.
I mean, they have to. Maybe they don't. Maybe there's people that live on that street now that have no fucking clue what happened there.
No, it's the first thing. I'd be that dude that told you the day you moved in. Hey, hear about what happened over there?
Yeah, right. You'd be that neighbor.
I'd be that guy. come
Like
down to my
you ever heard of the Delta Project?
I come down to my bathrobe with my sandals on with my socks, my basketball shorts, and my
Oh no.
like a Doctor Who shirt. Like, hey,
Are you a sandals and socks guy, Pat? Is this the end of our friendship?
oh, I
Is this
totally am.
the
I
end of the
don't
road here?
listen. I have never had a dress to get pussy. Never have, never will. I
Oh
look
my
how I
god.
look, and that's what it takes. And if you think I don't know, maybe that is why my wife doesn't sleep with me. I don't know. I haven't noticed it affecting my game too much. Let me put it like that.
Okay, well, on that note, I think we're done here. But no, very nice, very informative, very interesting stuff. Maybe we'll talk about just the Delta Project and more, and a bigger extent on a future episode. I always tease these future episodes, and sometimes they happen, and sometimes they don't.
Sure.
You never know when it's Wednesday. So, but on that note, guys, we'll see you back here next Wednesday.